Hello, this is Mr. Day, and welcome to my three-part lesson over the instrument families. This is for my kids at Parkway Elementary who are sadly having to stay home due to this crazy outbreak. But what better time to learn than relaxing at home with your favorite teacher, Mr. Day. Yeah, that's right. No, I'm just joking. Okay. The So this is, like I said, for my students at Parkway Elementary. We are covering instrument families. We've covered about 2 lessons, and I just wanted to finish this off for them so that way they could be able to learn as much as they can. So, um, for those who are also along the ride on YouTube, please sit back, enjoy my instrument families lessons. Sweet. Without further ado, we'll go and get right on into it. Now, my students at Parkway Elementary, if you guys remember correctly, we covered 4 different families, right? Now, those 4 different families, do you remember what they were? Let's go over them. It's been a little while, so it's good for review. The first one was strings. Second was woodwinds. Third was brass. And fourth was percussion. Those are the 4 families that we're covering over this unit. Now, for my students at Parkway Elementary, how many of you remember the strings? What are some characteristics that you know about these instruments that keep them in that category of the string family? If you're thinking about what we've talked about, how they have the strings just on the outside and they use a bow to be able to vibrate the sound, or you pluck the string to be able to create the sound, then you're absolutely right. Take this instrument for example, an instrument different that my kids at Parkway Elementary have seen. You guys have seen the violin and the cello. This is a different instrument. This is the guitar. The guitar, you pluck the string to be able to create the sound. Just like that. Now, whenever it comes to identifying string instruments, we always look for, do they have strings? Can those strings use a bow to be able to vibrate on the sound? Or can they be plucked on the strings to be able to create that sound? There are instruments that we'll be covering today that are a little bit different, where they just pluck or things like that we'll get into a little bit later. For those of you who are just watching this YouTube video, we won't be playing any of these YouTube clips, but I do highly suggest feel free to look at them, write them into your URL to be able to see them. They're really nice. Now students, there are 4 main instruments that we're covering inside the string family: the violin, viola, cello, and bass. The big bass. All these instruments are some of the biggest and most important ones inside the orchestral family that we've been covering in this unit. You guys have gone to see 2 of these, the violin and the cello. Now, it's enough about the string family. What about woodwinds? Do you guys remember those? A woodwind instrument is an instrument made out of wood, sometimes made out of metal too, but often uses this right here, this little wood piece called a reed, to be able to produce a sound. Some instruments are a little bit different that we'll be getting to again here, just a second for review. But yeah, so say for this one, this is a clarinet. A clarinet is a woodwind instrument in that it is made out of wood. To be able to produce the sound on the clarinet, you put your mouth onto the mouthpiece with the reed. You blow air to be able to vibrate on the reed to be able to create a sound. Just like that. Although there are some instruments that kind of don't fit this mold. Take the flute for example. The flute, as we can see, is made entirely out of metal. The same thing for the instrument on the right on this slide, the saxophone. These 2 instruments are both made out of metal. So it leads you to suggest that these must not be woodwinds. That is not the case. Rather, in fact, flutes used to primarily be made out of wood. Now they are made out of metal, but they still use a wood piece on the inside to be able to tune. That's why it still fits and why its origins stay with the woodwind family. As for that instrument on the right, that saxophone, it is made out of metal, but on the mouthpiece, you still use the reed. As you see with the clarinet, you still use that reed piece to be able to produce the sound, thus keeping it with the woodwind family. Moving on from the woodwinds, let's go over just a few of these. My students at Parkway have gotten to see a few of these, such as the flute and the clarinet. Some ones that we'll be covering are ones such as the saxophone, the oboe, the bassoon, and a few others that we'll be covering a little bit later. Now on to brass, the best section. As my students know, I love the brass the most because I am a brass player. This right here is what we call a French horn, a very big instrument. Now this instrument is fully made out of metal and uses a metal mouthpiece. There's no wood, no nothing involved with that. To be able to create the sound on a brass instrument, you put the mouthpiece up to the lip and then you blow to create a buzz inside the mouthpiece to be able to produce a sound. As my kiddos know, this funny little sound right here. It's pretty funny. It's a pretty funny sound. But then when you put it up to the horn, and then you blow into it, it makes it into a much more beautiful sound. That's the same for all brass instruments. Now there's quite a few different ones. There's ones that you guys have already gone to see, such as the trombone, the French horn, and some others that you haven't, such as the trumpet and the tuba. These are instruments that we'll be covering in more detail along inside this unit. And last but not least is percussion instruments. Now, if my students remember, the three main things that you can do to identify a percussion instrument is if you bang on it, if you rub it, or if you shake it to be able to produce a sound. There's so many different percussion instruments that you could be able to use. The drum, the tambourine, so many different ones. The biggest way to identify them is if you can be able to bang, rub, or shake to produce the sound. There's so many different instruments that you could be able to do. There's the gong, there's the drum, the xylophone, many different ones. It's very important to always remember about those three things when it comes to identifying the percussion instrument. All right. With that, let's go ahead and continue on. I've got some really fun activities for my kiddos today, some really fun stuff, and then some review over some things that are going to be sent out to you that you have the option of doing, which is really fun over this very long break. So, first things first, let's do this old game. I'm sure you guys remember it. This is Shiver Me Timbers for our instrument families. It's a really, really fun game. We'll go ahead and move a little bit farther into it. Let's start right here. Now, it's been a while since we've gotten to do this together, so let's review over with each other on what exactly, sorry, let me jump past you, on what exactly how this game is played. So, we have an instrument right in the middle of here. This instrument, we need to identify which family it goes to for the treasure chest. So, mateys, which ones do you think that this might be? This is a trumpet. The trumpet, remember, is fully made out of metal. It uses a metal mouthpiece that you create a buzz on to produce the sound. So, what do you think it might be? Strings, woodwinds, brass, or percussion? I'll give you a moment to think about it. If it was me, knowing that this is a fully metal instrument and that it has a metal mouthpiece that you create a buzz on, I would say that it's brass. Who agrees with me? Aye, it is brass. Very nice, very nice. Let's keep on going. Let's try out a few more. Which chest do you think that the triangle belongs to? The triangle is made out of metal, but you use that little metal piece right here. You use this metal piece to be able to bang on it to produce the sound. Remember, you used that metal piece to bang on it to produce the sound. What family do you think that this instrument belongs to? It's a tough one. It's fully made out of metal, so I know that brass instruments are made out of metal. So maybe it's brass. Ooh, whack the plank. Ugh. It's not quite. It turns out that's not actually a brass instrument. Now, why do you think that it's not a brass instrument? Well, it doesn't have a mouthpiece. You create a buzz on it to be able to produce the sound. You use that metal thing to be able to produce the sound by banging on it. So that must mean it's percussion? Exactly correct. That instrument, of course, was percussion because you use something to bang on it to be able to create that sound. Hey, the cello, an old friend that we've gotten to play with. A very, very fun instrument. The cello, as you can see, has strings on it. It uses a bow to be able to draw across the strings to be able to create a vibration on the sound. You can also pluck it to make the sound as well. Now, instrument has strings, so what family do you think it belongs to? Percussion? Brass? Woodwinds? Or strings? Which one might it be? If you were thinking strings, you would of course be correct. It is definitely strings. Very nice job. Ooh, the gong. Now some of my students here will know about this little guy. We talked about it a little bit inside our percussion stuff. Remember, the gong is a big old circle of metal that you use a big old mallet to bang on to create the sound. Remember, it is fully made out of metal, but you use a mallet to bang on it to create the sound. So, what do you think it might be? If you were thinking percussion, you would be absolutely correct. Very nice, very nice. All right, continuing on. Ooh, the bassoon. Very nice, very nice. What do you guys think this instrument might be? The bassoon is made out of entirely of wood. Uses a 2-reed mouthpiece, called a double reed. What do you think this one might be? If you were thinking woodwinds, you would be absolutely correct. Very nice. Now, a real quick thing for my students and for the viewers, my recording software only allows me to do 15 minutes at a time. So this lesson will of course be in parts, 3 different parts to be exact. We're almost getting close to the time on this one inside a minute. So as it continues, I'll go ahead and stop here in just a second and we'll keep on going. But for now, let's continue with our fun activity here. So, continuing on, the timpani, or otherwise known as the kettle drum. Now, the timpani is a big old round rose brass bottom, and you use a big old mallet to bang on it to create the sound. Now, what do you think it might be? Remember, you use a big old mallet to be able to bang on the top to create the sound. Which one could it be? Strings, woodwinds, brass, or percussion? Which one? Give you a moment to think. If you thought it was percussion, you'd be definitely correct. Okay, we will continue on with the French horn, my favorite instrument, here in just a second. See you guys in the next video.